Hello and welcome to CadenCenter. It's time for my yearly Lakers season recap. Obviously, a few days ago, the Lakers season came to an end in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets for the second straight year. And per usual, I'm just here to go through the entirety of the season, what went right, what went wrong, what went really wrong, and how the Lakers can look to fix things this summer and into next season. So we'll flash back to the beginning of the year in the offseason. The Lakers decided, all right, we made it to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, sure, we got swept, but we did as a 7th seed. We saw a lot of good things. We're going to run it back, like pretty much a full season with Western Conference Finals core. Obviously lost Dennis Schroeder, but besides that, they decided to pretty much keep everybody together, including the starting five that did so well. A big key that we also now know in hindsight was a pretty poor decision was they elected to keep D'Angelo Russell despite his playoff struggles because they saw what he did in the regular season. They saw he was a part of the change in the way the team played after last year's trade deadline. So they decided to do that, and they added Taurean Prince, who's been a pretty good, 40% three-point shooter, 3-and-D guy. Gabe Vincent, who had just had his best season with the Heat, including a pretty impressive finals against the Denver Nuggets, and Jackson Hayes as a backup center to Anthony Davis. And the season started out pretty right, outside of the usual, first game of the season loss. The Lakers have not won the first game of the season since LeBron arrived. The loss was to Denver. They got hot, and that really, the momentum carried up through the in-season tournament, the inaugural in-season tournament that the Lakers were able to win their group, make it out of bracket play, make it to Vegas to be able to eventually play the Pelicans and then the Pacers. They won that. Things were looking up. They were a top 5 seed. They also were able to end the drought to the Clippers. It just felt like they could never beat them. They finally did that. And things looked really good, AD still wasn't, taking over as the number one option. And there are a couple reasons for that. Mainly, Brown was just still playing well, so why, give it up? He could still facilitate and score. He wasn't getting injured. So things were looking okay. But after the in-season tournament is when a sort of downfall started happening. And it starts, with the coaching and Darvin Ham's decision to bench Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and even D'Angelo Russell at some point. And to be honest, I can't explain why. In the post-game presser after the last Nuggets loss, some people asked him why were the rotations always changing, and he's saying when guys, word I can't say, the bed, it feels like you have to change something up. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think the changes he made, such as starting Taurean Prince and Cam Reddish, were at all logical, nor did it feel like, Reeves or Rui were ever playing so bad they had to be benched. So the skid started, it all started going downhill. There were an occasional injury, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, but overall it felt like things were just suddenly collapsing and there wasn't really an answer for why it was happening. So now we're leading up to the trade deadline. All of a sudden, it's just like last year. The Lakers are going to pretty much have to fight for a play-in spot. And Rob Pelinka and company decide to stay put. They decide, look, we're just going to, there's no good players. I think Pelinka said you can't, sell a house that's not up for sale. You can't buy a house that's not up for sale, rather. So he was like, you know what? There's not that much on the market. We're not going to overpay. We're going to hope, Vanderbilt, Vincent get healthy and the rest of the guys get going. And so then we started yet another late playoff push after the deadline, after the All-Star break. And just like last year, things started going up. This time it wasn't because the roster had a big turnover. It was because Darvin Ham came to his senses and started the starting five that got the Lakers to the Western Conference Finals last year with D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James. It was Vanderbilt last year because Vanderbilt was hurt. They just stepped Rui in, and Rui did great. And, of course, Anthony Davis. So that five really started getting going. Bench roles were able to be established among the role players. They signed Spencer Dinwiddie, who, wasn't great in the last part of the season, but you knew he was a depth piece. And so now, last game of the regular season, they need to win to secure a 7-8 playing game. They beat the Pelicans, and then they beat the Pelicans again in the 7-8 play-in game. And that sets up a rematch with the Denver Nuggets. Before we get into that and what happened, I do want to note some things over the course of the season that, just happened, especially in the last part where they were able to get up to the play-in. LeBron and AD both played 70-plus games. Most games LeBron's played since 2018. I believe the most games Anthony Davis has played since pre-COVID. But yet, the team wasn't fully dominant, which is really weird. If you told me LeBron and AD were both going to be healthy, I'd predict the Lakers are going to win like 50 games and be a top 5 seed. But again, that coaching problem comes up again because the starters around AD were constantly switching when they didn't need to. The rotations were poor, and things were kind of a mess. D'Lo, of course, I mean, now we know that he fooled us, but he set the Lakers franchise record for three-pointers made in a single season. And that's big because the Lakers, despite the success they've had in recent years with LeBron coming over in the championship, I don't think over the course of history, Lakers have had ever really an elite shooter. Like, obviously, back in the day, Byron Scott could be considered elite, but no one in the modern day since Steph Curry changed the game with the type of high volume. Most guys just fold and all of a sudden forget to shoot. Think Malik Beasley, Ben McLemore, those type of people. So for D'Lo to set the record, it was like, okay, we have three-point shooting now, which has been a problem. Yes, there are some injuries going into this Denver series, but it certainly felt possible. Now, when I made a prediction, I said Denver in 6, but as a fan, I certainly believe there was a path for the Lakers to win because this series was so close last year, literally each game. I think the Nuggets swept, obviously, but their point differential was like plus 20 over the course of each game. It was the least dominant sweep we've ever seen. But that's a stretch. Anyway, so it was time for a rematch. And, game by game, we know what happened. It was the same issues of last year, inability to close games, blowing leads, free throw issues, especially in Game 5 that cost them. Just things like that, unable to stop Jamal Murray and Jokic as closers. And we know those problems, but the cause really has to be emphasized here because it's where the Lakers can change things this offseason. First of all, the Nuggets are way better coach. Michael Malone, as much as he clowns the Lakers and there's a joke like, oh, he's LeBron Lakers daddy, whatever they want to say, he is a good coach. I will admit that. And he's 5 times better than Darvin Ham. So automatically, Lakers are disadvantaged, and we saw them lead 3 times the amount of time as the Nuggets did, but still lose a series. That right there is a coach problem. That's not a personnel problem. That's not anything else. When that type of thing happens, that is a coaching problem. Jokic and Murray, like I said, best closers in the game. Lakers couldn't keep up. Just going player by player here, Bron and AD had a quality series. I mean, LeBron it was automatic. He was giving you 26, 27, or 30. All you can ask for. Anthony Davis dominated on Nikola Jokic on offense. Yes, did he let Jokic score? Sure, but no one's stopping Nikola Jokic, and I would have taken AD and Jokic kind of canceling each other out. But when they did cancel each other out, you were looking for the role players to do something. Austin Reeves was solid, had 1 or 2 bad games, but overall, he didn't lose the game for them by any means, and in Game 5, he was keeping them in it. He was literally the number 1 go-to guy down the stretch, and he was consistently getting buckets. I believe he got like 6 or 8 straight points in that fourth quarter. But it was D'Lo and Rui that really disappointed me. With D'Lo, I was concerned because I was like, oh, well, here we go again. But Bruce Brown wasn't on the Nuggets team, so maybe felt like he wouldn't be as exposed much on defense, which could let up for a little margin error on offense, but no. He was on and off, literally good game, bad game, good game, bad game. And the bad games were just so tragic, and Lakers could only win one of his good games. Like, D'Lo is a very streaky shooter, and when it's not going, he's not the type of point guard that's going to facilitate or get you going. As for Rui, this has been an issue for the 1.5 seasons now, I guess, technically 2, that he's been with the Lakers. It's really his defense. He's this awkward middle guy that he's not quick or short enough to guard or keep up with guys that run off screens. Like we saw Klay Thompson in the Warriors series. That gave him huge issues. And it was Michael Porter Jr. in this series that really cooked him. And he wasn't able to respond on the offensive end for the most part outside of Game 5, so he was a negative on both sides, which led to Taurean Prince stepping up and actually playing a pretty good series. And I think Taurean Prince pretty much saved his chances of continuing to be a Laker with this series because he played so much better that I'll get into it later when I discuss the future, that the Lakers definitely want to find a way to get him back. As for the backup guards of Spencer Dinwiddie and Gabe Vincent, I pretty much render them useless. Even if you combine their volume and what they did, it doesn't even equal the value of one player. Vincent, come back from injury, sure, but he was bad before the injury. 3-point shot never got going. His defense was okay on Jamal Murray, but Austin Reeves was doing a way better job. As for Spencer Dinwiddie, inefficient shot chucking. Defense didn't make up for it, even though he showed some flashes in the regular season. So those two are very disappointing. And that's when, you bring up coaching again, and it's like, what would it have took to get Max Christie on the floor? Maybe even Cam Reddish. I'm not a big Cam Reddish guy, okay? But I have been, over the course of Max Christie's career, a bigger Max Christie guy. Because, look, he has improved as a shooter. I think next year, if you give him a good role, he will shoot 38 to 40% from 3, which is all you need. I think he can provide defense. He could have brought length onto Murray, which would allow Austin Reeves to guard KCP or a lesser offensive player, and allowed Austin to have better offensive games 1 through 4, which the Lakers would have needed. And, Cam Reddish is another kind of the same archetype as Christie defense, but I will admit there's a reason for Darvin Ham not playing, but Christie just makes no sense. So I think that was another coaching mistake there. Obviously, no Vando, no Wood. Vando came back, or could have came back in game 4. Did not play. Look, throwing a guy in an elimination game is tough after he doesn't play for a few months, so I kind of understand that. But him on Michael Porter Jr. really, really would have helped because MPJ was just getting around Rui. He still could shoot over Torian Prince. I think Vando would have been a different story. Christian Wood was able to turn in game 5. Honestly, I didn't expect him to play. Jackson was playing well enough to where he doesn't replace him. And a double big lineup of Wood and AD. Don't know how it's going to throw off the offensive rhythm. So that kind of is what it is. And I just want to talk about, Jamal Murray, Jokic, they get all the credit. We all know that. But MPJ was the X factor in the series by far. It felt like every time the Lakers are going to pull away, MPJ hits this clutcher to keep him in it. Gives them the lead. If you look at the Jamal Murray buzzer beater games 2 and 5, there was a shot that Porter hit to keep them in it after on a broken play. He just, every single time. Michael Porter Jr. was a timely shooter. I think that's the most important value of a shooter is timeliness. Can they hit it when it matters, even if they're struggling? But he wasn't struggling, and he was timely. So great series from him. And like I said, man, it would have helped. So now the season's over. You look ahead to the offseason. It starts with coaching. Like I said, Darvin Ham did a bad job. He should be fired. That's already been reported that it should happen once exit meetings, interviews happen, and the GMs, Rob Pelinka and the front office gets together and decides that. So assuming he's gone, the hire list, we don't really have it yet because we don't know what assistants are going to become available. Is a head coach going to get fired, towards the end of these playoffs? So we'll have to see about that. But no matter what, Darvin should be gone. You can just look elsewhere and you'll probably get a better coach. Now you go to LeBron. Now, it was thrown out by Woj that he wants to come back, 2-3-year deal. The structure of it just needs to be determined. LeBron tweeted hey, that's not true. I want to spend time with my family, then figure it out. I think LeBron will return because I don't think he's going to uproot the family and move again. I'm sure Savannah loves the LA weather. She started a podcast. She's enjoying the Hollywood aspect. Bryce is still in high school. So I feel like the family aspect really comes together in him staying in LA. And the only option in LA is the Clippers, which I don't think he's going to do that. So I think LeBron does stay. I think it's going to be a 2-year deal, maybe with a player option as a third, to give him the flexibility with Bronny that I'll talk about a little bit later. And overall, just to try to get one more ring because really the whole NBA only has 2 or 3 more years. And then Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs are going to get it together and take over the Western Conference. So I think that's what will happen. So now once that does happen, this is something LeBron might request. It's trading for a third star. Now, the third star, I think there's a small group of somewhat realistic options. It's Donovan Mitchell of the Cavs, especially if the Cavs exit in the playoffs. Here, the Orlando Magic throw 3-2 right now, or even in the second round to the Celtics. I think they'll want to blow it up, and Spider will be unhappy. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, and Zach LaVine. Now, Trae Young, if you watch the Denver series and you think Trae Young is the solution, you're probably tripping because his defense would be even worse. So I like the idea of his offense and what it could provide, but I don't know if it's what's necessary. But it would be a safe bet for if LeBron's offense declines, something like that. Would take pressure. DeJounte Murray, I don't think he moves the needle. His defense has declined since being in Atlanta. Maybe playing along LeBron and AD and having less offensive responsibility would bring his defensive ability back up. But too risky. So Spida is the guy that I would focus on if I was Lakers. As for Zach LaVine, there's the injury risk. The contract is pretty bad. No one else wants to trade for him for a reason. If Chicago really just wanted to blow it up, and maybe you could get a good deal. But I think Spider's the number one option. Unrealistic options are Devin Booker, Kevin Durant if they really, really force it. But I don't see that happening. And the Suns GM already said that they don't think they need to blow it up. So if the third star trade is done, obviously the key assets are the Lakers' first-round pick this year. They have the second as well, and I believe they have 1 or 2 first-round picks also available because the Pelicans aren't taking their picks. So they should have at least 2 more available, I believe, and the second-round picks. And obviously, just those aren't going to get you a player. You have to match the contracts, and luckily the Lakers have a lot of trade-friendly contracts, and those are D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, and Rui Hachimura. D'Lo, you don't want to re-sign to your team. If you're going to trade for one of those guys, you're probably going to make D'Lo as a part of a sign-and-trade, and then you're going to try to add Rui to that deal, I'd imagine. The Lakers have made it so clear that they just never want to trade Austin Reeves. I don't think LeBron would ever say, hey, we should be willing to let Austin go because he really does seem to trust Austin. So you think of a package of D'Lo, Rui, 2-3 first-round picks, throw in some seconds, whatever, maybe a player here and there. Can that get you one of those guys? I don't know. Because in Lakerland, Laker fans love to be really delusional. Like I said, I think if the Cavs do really go down in the first round, they could do something. I think if the Hawks are really desperate, they could get one of those guys. So we'll really have to see as the summer goes on and these playoffs end what is available. But yeah, and if you don't trade these guys, and for whatever reason you re-sign D'Lo and Rui, they really need to step up, and they need to do it fast and be ready for the playoffs. And if you don't trade Austin Reeves, please sign a defender or make sure Vando's healthy so he doesn't have to keep guarding point guards, because he is much better when he can just focus on offense. He's a good defender. He just doesn't have the length that some of these other elite defenders do. Moving on, though, to a little bit farther down the roster in the depth chart from this year, I already said a couple times, Max Christie should have maybe played in these playoffs. He definitely needs a bigger role next year. Like I said, 38 to 40% three-point guy next year. He can do it, I believe. You look at Jalen Hood-Schifino as maybe a possible third point guard if you want to focus on wings and centers, which is a good idea, by the way. And the Lakers also, in the draft, they don't trade the pick, should focus on centers and wings. Khalil Ware, Indiana, he'd be a great fit. Anyway, but yeah, so JHS, maybe if you think he could play like a third point guard role where he only steps in for injury, plays spot minutes, you could see about that. But really, it may also come down to how do you build to beat Denver? And I'll be honest, I think the Lakers are already built to beat Denver. I really do. I think this team could have beat Denver if, like I said, it weren't for coaching. So I don't think that's too much of a concern. One way that you could consider building for Denver, though, is, like I said, a center to play alongside AD. You eliminate the Aaron Gordon aspect of it. Of their offense, the dunker spot, the cuts, and that way you don't have to have Rui guarding Jokic, so AD cuts it off and AD can focus and then have rebounding behind him. You reduce the risk of AD's injury. AD can slim down and plays power forward, and we know when he slims down, his jump shot's better, which should unlock another part of the offense, because we know in 2020 when AD was shooting that three ball, things really opened up. And the biggest shot of maybe the Lakers season 2020 was an 83 ball with that buzzer beater versus Denver in the bubble. So that's something you can do. And another question is it possible to build a team that can avoid the play-in? Because, that extra 1 or 2 games, having to constantly worry about the end of the season that you can't rest LeBron and AD because every single game matters, can you do that? And that's why, like, Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young probably gets you a team that can make the 4 or 5 seed, in addition to competent coaching. So that's the thing to consider. Do the Lakers really finally want to build for the regular season rather than continuing to run it back based on playoff performance? If that does happen, then D'Lo would probably come back, which is an interesting dice roll. So there's just so many things to look at in terms of that. And then there's whether you want to build around AD's timeline. If there is a chaotic scenario where LeBron is like, no, I'm not coming back, then you have to look at, okay, Trae Young contract lines up pretty well with AD. Zach LaVine's lines up. Donovan Mitchell doesn't really, but you could re-sign him to line up with AD. So if you want to do something like that, you can maybe build a younger team. But I highly doubt, and I really hope they don't do that, because while LeBron is still here, you got to build for winning now. And that's what the Lakers franchise is. They don't try to tank or be middle of the pack. It's championship. And the last topic I want to get into is the idea that the Lakers could possibly get LeBron back in the case that LeBron is like, I'm only coming back if you guys draft Bronny. Now, we know a couple years ago as Bronny was growing up through high school, LeBron was like, yeah, I want to play with him. Whoever signs him, I'm going to. He's since backtracked on that, and I think that's maybe because Bronny is like, hey, I want to be my own man, maybe, and also because Bronny's heart issue just pushed back his career. It would really, truly be best for Bronny to go back to college, transfer from USC, and just find a new home that can develop him. Obviously, I know he's in the draft, but that's, I hope, just to hear what GMs think he should do. I don't think he should go get drafted and stashed in the D-League. I don't think he should go undrafted or go into the draft if he knows he's going to be undrafted, sign a deal. Hope none of that happens. But if LeBron does try to force the Lakers' hand, I think you still do it. I really do. I think if you waste a first-round pick on Bronny, that's bad. But if you can get him in the second round or as an undrafted free agent, and if LeBron really, really, really wants it, take the sacrifice of a second-round pick. The Lakers, the last couple of years, drafting hasn't been amazing anyway. So maybe we'll see LeBron and Bronny, and there's so many other possibilities. Like I said, the Lakers in the draft could get a center like Khalil Ware. He could come in. Is there a world where, because the Bulls are in so much shambles, the Lakers can reunite with Alex Caruso? There are some shooters available in free agency. Who do you resign with Dinwiddie Prince? There's so many options, and I hope Rob Pelinka is able to piece it together, because LeBron's time is constantly running out. I know I've been saying it for like 10 years because the dude is like 40 years old. But LeBron's time is eventually running out, and he has said, 2-3 years, that's been the report. So we'll see how all of it goes. Obviously, NBA playoffs still plenty of time left with that, so we'll see what kind of coaching opportunities and all that open up. But yeah, so it was a roller coaster season for the Lakers yet again. They fall short in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets in the first round. We'll see where they go from there. Thank you all for tuning in to yet another Lakers season recap, and I will see you guys next time.